In the grim darkness of the far future, there exist forces so terrible that even speaking their names invites damnation. The demon engines of chaos stand among the most horrifying creations ever to stalk the battlefields of the 41st millennium, mechanical nightmares that blur the line between machine and monster. These are not mere vehicles piloted by flesh and blood crews, but prisons of twisted metal housing the screaming essence of warp entities bound against their will into forms designed for one purpose: slaughter. And then there are the Orks. The greenskin race looks upon the galaxy's horrors with a perspective that can only be described as uniquely optimistic. Where other species see abominations, Orks see opportunities. Where the Imperium of man encounters demon engines and responds with purging fire and litanies of hatred, Orks see them and think a single, devastating thought: that'd be proper good if it had more Daka. This is the story of what happens when these two fundamental forces of the Warhammer 40,000 universe collide. When the brutal, joyful pragmatism of the Orks meets the tortured malevolence of a chaos Maulerfiend. When the woe-ag energy that makes Ork technology function in defiance of physics encounters the warp-spawned essence of a demon trapped in metal and ceramite. It is a tale that illuminates not just the nature of these two factions, but something profound about the galaxy itself and the strange rules that govern its reality. To understand what happens when Orks capture a Maulerfiend, we must first understand what each of these elements truly is, beyond the superficial descriptions found in tactical briefings. We must delve into the dark forges where warpsmiths bind screaming demons into shells of adamantium and blessed steel. We must explore the ramshackle workshops where mech boys hammer impossible machines into existence through sheer belief and instinct. And we must examine what occurs when these two impossible realities collide in ways that neither Chaos nor the Greenskins could have predicted. The Maulerfiend represents one of the Dark Mechanicum's most successful attempts to create a weapon that combines the durability of machinery with the raw hatred of a warp entity. The Orks represent a race whose entire technological civilization functions on principles that should not work, animated by a psychic field generated by their collective belief. When these forces meet, the results are as unpredictable as they are terrifying, creating situations that challenge our understanding of how the 41st millennium operates. The nature of the Maulerfiend, demon engines, and their dark creation. Before we can understand what happens when Orks get their hands on a Maulerfiend, we need to comprehend exactly what these creatures are. To call a Maulerfiend simply a vehicle or even a demon engine is to dramatically undersell the horrifying reality of their existence. These are not machines in any conventional sense. They are abominations that exist at the intersection of the material and immaterial, the mechanical and the demonic, the possible and the utterly wrong. A Maulerfiend begins its existence not in a forge or a factory, but in the twisted soul forges that exist in the dark corners of the Imperium, where chaos holds sway. Here, in places where reality grows thin and the warp bleeds through into real space, the masters of the Dark Mechanicum practice their profane arts. These are the warpsmiths, fallen tech priests who have abandoned the Omnissiah in favor of darker powers, who have traded the rigid dogma of Mars for the infinite possibilities of chaos. The creation of a demon engine is not a matter of simple engineering. It requires first the construction or capture of a suitable mechanical frame. In the case of Maulerfiends, this means creating a quadrupedal walker roughly the size of an Imperial dreadnought, equipped with articulated legs designed to scale vertical, surfaces and powerful melee weapons capable of tearing apart tanks. But the metal shell is only the beginning. It is the prison, not the prisoner. The second step is far more complex and dangerous. The warpsmith must venture into the immaterium itself, or send their servants to do so, and there capture a demon. Not just any demon will do. The entity must be powerful enough to animate the mechanical frame, filled with sufficient rage and hatred to fuel the weapons systems. yet not so powerful that it can break free of the bindings that will hold it. This is not a matter of negotiation or pacts, as a sorcerer might make with a demon they wish to summon. This is enslavement. The demon is dragged, screaming and fighting, from the warp into real space. But it is not given form in the way a summoned demon would be. Instead, it is forced into the mechanical shell that has been prepared for it. Rune-bound chains, woven from the hair of murderers, wrap around its essence. Symbols of binding are etched into every surface of the machine's interior. The demon is compressed, confined, trapped in a prison of metal and ceramite from which there is no escape. Imagine, if you can, the experience of such an entity. Demons are beings of pure thought and emotion, creatures that exist as concepts given terrible form by the collective nightmares of sentient species. They are rage or despair or ambition made manifest. To trap such a being in a mechanical form is to inflict a torture beyond mortal comprehension. The demon that powers a Maulerfiend is in constant agony, its infinite hatred compressed into a finite space, its desire to kill and maim the only outlet for its suffering. This is what gives the Maulerfiend its terrible power. Every movement of its articulated legs, every strike of its power fists, every victim torn apart by its magma cutters feeds the demon's hunger for destruction. The machine does not simply follow programmed responses like an Imperial vehicle. It hunts, it stalks, it knows hatred in a way no machine should be capable of knowing anything. The physical capabilities of a Maulerfiend are formidable even without considering the demon within. These engines stand approximately 12 feet tall and weigh several tons, their bulk carried on 4 powerful legs, equipped with gripping claws that allow them to scale sheer walls and climb over obstacles that would stop conventional vehicles. This has earned them the nicknames Stalkers and Scalers, among those unfortunate enough to face them in battle. Their armament typically consists of 2 massive power fists, prehensile claws capable of generating enough force to tear the limbs from an Imperial dreadnought. These can be supplemented with magma cutters, weapons that focus the demon's internal fury into a white-hot beam capable of melting through fortress walls. Additionally, lasher tendrils provide the Maulerfiend with the ability to sweep aside infantry or lash out at multiple targets simultaneously. But it is not just the weapons that make a Maulerfiend dangerous. The creature moves with an unholy agility that seems impossible for something of its size and mass. It can sprint across battlefields at shocking speeds, scale vertical surfaces with the ease of a spider, and adjust its tactics in real time as the demon within assesses threats and opportunities. This is not a mindless war machine following pre-programmed patterns. Every Maulerfiend is, in effect, alive and intelligent, guided by a malevolent consciousness that has spent time beyond mortal comprehension learning how to kill. The demon's presence also imbues the Maulerfiend with certain properties that defy conventional physics. It possesses an invulnerable save, a supernatural resistance to damage that comes from its demonic nature. Shots that should penetrate its armor sometimes simply fail to do so, as if reality itself bends around the creature. It can regenerate damage through a process the Imperium has termed infernal regeneration, the demon's essence knitting torn metal and severed hydraulics back together through sheer force of will. Perhaps most disturbing is the effect that Maulerfiends have on the world around them. Like all demon engines, they exude an aura of wrongness that affects unprotected mortals on a primal level. Guardsmen facing a Maulerfiend often find themselves paralyzed with terror that has nothing to do with the rational fear of the creature's weapons. The demon within reaches out with its presence, and weak minds break under the weight of knowing they face something that should not exist. The Iron Warriors Legion, masters of siege warfare among the traitor legions, particularly favor Maulerfiends. This is not simply because of their anti-fortification capabilities, though those are considerable. It is because the Iron Warriors understand something fundamental about demon engines. They are weapons that grow more effective the more they are used. Each kill feeds the daemon. Each fortress breached satisfies its hunger for destruction, and with each engagement, the bond between machine and monster grows stronger. In combat, Maulerfiends are typically unleashed in pairs or small groups, pointed at the enemy like attack dogs, and released to do what they do best: close with the foe and tear them apart. They thunder across the battlefield with their eyes glowing with balefire, ectoplasmic drool dripping from their fanged maws, driven by a hatred that has burned since before humanity learned to make fire. And when they reach their prey, whether it is infantry, vehicles, or fortifications, they demonstrate with brutal efficiency why the demon engines of chaos are among the most feared weapons in the galaxy. This, then, is what the Orks are attempting to loot when they capture a Maulerfiend. Not a vehicle, not even truly a machine, but a prison containing a fragment of the warp itself, a creature of pure malevolence bound in a shell of metal and forced to serve purposes it despises. The Orks, in their cheerful ignorance, look at this horror and see only potential. The Orkish approach, mech boys, the waig, and the philosophy of looting. To understand what happens when Orks capture a Maulerfiend, we must understand how Orks think about technology, or more accurately, how they do not think about it. The greenskin approach to engineering exists in a category entirely separate from how other races interact with machinery. It is not learned through study or experimentation. It is not passed down through written instruction or formal education. It simply is, encoded in the genetic memory of every Ork from the moment they emerge from their fungal spore. The Orks were created more than 60 million years ago by the Old Ones, the ancient reptilian race that once dominated the galaxy. These beings possessed technology that made even the golden age of technology look primitive by comparison. They engineered the Orks, or rather their predecessors called the Krork, as warrior servants in their war against the Satan and their Necrontyr slaves. But the Old Ones built more than just soldiers. They created a self-sustaining military ecosystem, a race that could reproduce through spores, that could adapt to any environment, and that carried within its very genetic code the knowledge needed to maintain a technological civilization. This is where mech boys come from. They are not Orks who have studied engineering or learned mechanics. They are Orks whose genetic inheritance has expressed itself in a particular way, causing them to emerge from their spores with an instinctive understanding of how to build things. Ask a mech boy to explain how a force field generator works, and he will look at you with confusion. He cannot explain it because he does not truly understand it himself. But give him a pile of scrap metal, some wire, and a few random components, and he will build you a force field generator that functions perfectly, at least by Ork standards. This genetic knowledge manifests as visions and urges. A young mech boy will see designs for weapons and vehicles in his mind, patterns and schematics that seem to come from nowhere. He does not question these visions. He simply starts building, hammering, and welding, and bolting things together with what can only be described as inspired improvisation. The results often look like they should not work. Guns made from pipes and scrap metal, vehicles that seem to have no coherent design philosophy, spacecraft that by all rights should fall apart the moment they enter orbit. But they work. They work because of the second crucial element of Ork technology, the WH field. The WH is one of the most poorly understood phenomena in the 41st millennium, and the Imperium's attempts to explain it often miss the point entirely. Imperial scholars theorize about machine spirits and psychic effects, trying to fit Ork technology into their existing understanding of how the universe operates. But the way Ga is something fundamentally different, a gestalt psychic field generated by all Orks together that has the power to affect reality itself. Every Ork contributes to the WH field simply by existing. It is not a conscious process. Orks do not actively project psychic power the way a human psyker might. Instead, their collective belief, their shared understanding of how things should work, creates a field of psychic energy that makes those things actually work. When enough orcs believe that red vehicles go faster, red vehicles do go faster, at least when orcs are driving them. When orcs believe that more dakka means more better, adding more guns to a vehicle genuinely does improve its performance, even when the additional weight and complexity should make it worse. This is not unlimited reality manipulation. The WH field does not allow orcs to simply wish things into existence. A mech boy cannot build a gun out of a gong, stick and some string and expect it to fire just because he believes it will. The technology must have some basis in reality, some foundation that the WH field can build upon. But where human technology might need precision engineering and careful calculations to function, orc technology just needs to be close enough. The WH field fills in the gaps, smooths over the impossibilities, and makes the whole ramshackle contraption work anyway. The more orcs gather in one place, the stronger the WH field becomes. This is why orc technology actually improves as a WH grows. Devices that barely functioned when an orc was alone suddenly work perfectly when surrounded by thousands of his fellows. Weapons that misfired constantly become reliable. Vehicles that could barely move begin to perform like finely tuned machines. The collective belief of the WH makes it so. Weird boys, the orc psychers, serve as living proof of this field's existence. They are orcs who are particularly sensitive to the WH energy, able to feel the psychic pressure building around them as orcs gather and grow excited. This is not a gift they generally appreciate. The psychic feedback from thousands of orcs shouting and fighting causes weird boys physical pain, and if they do not release the energy through pyrotechnic displays of destruction, their heads will literally explode. But their very existence demonstrates that the WH field is real, measurable, and incredibly powerful. Now, with this understanding of how orcs interact with technology, we can begin to appreciate their approach to looting. When orcs capture enemy equipment, they are not simply stealing weapons to use as is. They are incorporating these items into their own technological ecosystem, subjecting them to the reality-warping influence of the WH field. Looted vehicles are a perfect example of this process. When orcs capture an Imperial Guard Lehman Russ tank or a Space Marine Rhino, they do not simply repaint it and use it unchanged. That would be boring and, more importantly, un-orky. Instead, mech boys descend on the captured vehicle with welding torches, hammers, and what can only be described as creative enthusiasm. They rip out components they do not understand or do not like. They add armor plates and weapons with no regard for weight distribution or stress tolerances. They install big red buttons whose function they do not fully comprehend but which seem important. They paint the entire thing in clan colors and add tribal glyphs for good luck. The result should not work. By any reasonable standard of engineering, a looted wagon should be a mobile disaster, a collection of incompatible parts held together by prayer and wishful thinking. But it does work, because the orcs believe it will work, and the WH field makes that belief reality. The captured tank might actually perform better in orc hands than it did in its original configuration, not despite the modifications, but because of them. The orcs have made it orky, and anything sufficiently orky will function in the presence of other orcs. This philosophy of looting extends to everything the orcs encounter: Imperial weapons, Tau technology, even Eldar artifacts, all can be looted and improved by mech boys with sufficient enthusiasm. The Death Skulls clan has elevated looting to an art form, their entire culture built around the acquisition and modification of enemy equipment. They understand instinctively what many of the galaxy's more sophisticated races refuse to acknowledge: that in the 41st millennium, there is no such thing as a weapon that cannot be made better with enough dakka and a complete disregard for conventional engineering principles. Mech boys are not deterred by complexity or danger. They have looted Imperial knights, towering war machines that house the souls of noble pilots. They have captured Tau battlesuits and turned them into ramshackle parodies of their former elegance. They have, even in rare cases, managed to loot and repurpose Necron technology, turning weapons millions of years old into crude but effective orc guns. Nothing is too advanced, too sacred, or too dangerous to be immune to the mech boys' attentions. This is because mech boys possess something that more sophisticated engineers often lack: absolute confidence. A tech priest of the Adeptus Mechanicus might spend years studying a piece of technology before daring to modify it, performing elaborate rituals to appease the machine spirit, and consulting ancient texts to ensure compliance with established patterns. A mech boy looks at the same technology, hits it with a wrench until it stops making the wrong noises, bolts a few extra bits onto it, and declares the job done. Both approaches have their merits, but only one of them is fun. The orcs also bring to their looting a cheerful disregard for the symbolic or spiritual significance of what they are capturing. An Imperial Knight is not a sacred war machine, housing centuries of noble tradition. It is a big stompy thing with lots of guns that would be even better if it was painted red and had more dakka. A Tau battlesuit is not an expression of the greater good philosophy through technology. It is a fancy suit that would benefit from being larger, louder, and more likely to explode. The orcs strip away all the meaning and see only the potential. This pragmatic materialism extends even to their relationship with their own technology. Orcs do not worship their machines the way the Adeptus Mechanicus does. They do not perform rituals of maintenance or speak prayers of activation. They simply use them, hit them when they stop working, and build new ones when the old ones finally fall apart. An orc's relationship with his shooter is fundamentally transactional. The gun shoots things, the orc points it at enemies, and if it stops shooting things, the orc will find a mech boy to fix it or build him a new one. But perhaps most importantly, orcs approach technology with joy. A mech boy building a new gun or modifying a captured vehicle is not performing a grim duty or fulfilling an obligation. He is having the time of his life. The sound of hammers on metal, the spark of welding torches, the smell of promethium and gunpowder, these are the things that make an orc happy. When mech boys gather to work on a particularly interesting project, it is as much social event as it is engineering work. They shout suggestions to each other, argue about the best placement for guns, occasionally hit each other when disagreements become heated, and generally treat the entire process as a grand adventure. This enthusiasm is important because it feeds the way each field. The more excited orcs are, the stronger the field becomes. A mech boy working on a project he finds fascinating generates more WAG energy than one performing routine maintenance. This means that the most ambitious and audacious projects, the ones that have no business working, are, paradoxically, the most likely to succeed. The mech boy's enthusiasm feeds the field makes the impossible possible, and the end result is something that defies all reasonable expectations. This is the mindset that orcs bring to their encounter with a Maulerfiend. They do not see a demon engine, a heretical abomination that blurs the line between the mechanical and the demonic. They do not recognize the years of dark sorcery and forbidden knowledge that went into its creation. They see a big metal thing with claws and cutters that would be absolutely proper for getting stuck into a good scrap. And with that simple observation, they set in motion events that will test the boundaries of what is possible in the 41st millennium. The battlefield encounter. How orcs capture the uncapturable. The capture of a Maulerfiend by orcs is not a common occurrence, and for good reason. These demon engines are deployed by Chaos Space Marines as elite shock troops, unleashed at critical moments to break enemy lines or shatter fortifications. They are not left unguarded or poorly defended. They are valuable assets that the traitor legions protect jealously, and losing one represents both a tactical setback and a blow to the pride of the Chaos Lords who command them. But orcs have a talent for achieving the improbable through sheer mass, enthusiasm, and a complete failure to understand when something should be impossible. The capture typically begins with a battle, as almost all orc stories do. Let us imagine one such encounter, drawing on documented incidents and the established patterns of Ork warfare. The world is Gorgath Prime, an industrial planet on the edge of the Segmentum Obscurus. The Iron Warriors warband, known as the Warp Claw, has besieged the primary hive city for 3 months, their demon engines and artillery slowly grinding down the defenders. Among their arsenal are a pair of Maulerfiends, unleashed nightly to scale the hive walls and tear apart defensive positions, sowing terror among the Imperial Guard regiments holding the line. But Gorgath Prime is not only under attack by chaos. An Ork Wag, led by the ambitious war boss Skarzag the Unstoppable, has been raiding systems throughout the sector. Skarzag does not particularly care about the Imperium's strategic concerns or the Iron Warriors' siege. He simply heard there was a good fight happening on Gorgath Prime, and any good fight is worth joining. The Orks arrive with the subtlety of an orbital bombardment, their fleet of ramshackle spacecraft depositing thousands of boys directly into the middle of the battlefield. They do not attempt to coordinate with the Imperial defenders, or even avoid landing in areas already held by Chaos forces. They simply want to fight, and they are aggressively indifferent to who they fight against. The Iron Warriors, initially viewing the Ork arrival as a nuisance rather than a threat, deploy one of their Maulerfiends to deal with the new arrivals. This turns out to be a catastrophic miscalculation, though not for the reasons the Chaos Space Marines expect. The Maulerfiend thunders toward the Ork landing zones, its eyes blazing with balefire, ectoplasmic drool hissing as it hits the ground. The demon within senses prey, hundreds of Orks ripe for slaughter, and it moves with predatory purpose. The first mob it encounters, a group of shooter boys, opens fire with typically Orkish enthusiasm, their crude weapons sparking off the demon engine's armor. The Maulerfiend responds by tearing into their ranks, its power fists crushing Orks with mechanical efficiency, while its lasher tendrils sweep aside those trying to flank it. For most opponents, this would be the end of the story. The Maulerfiend would slaughter the infantry, move on to the next target, and continue its rampage until ordered to return, or until destroyed. But Orks are not most opponents. The boys fighting the demon engine are not breaking and running. They are shouting with excitement, calling to their fellows that there is a big metal git here that needs a proper crumping. More Orks arrive, drawn by the sounds of battle and the prospect of fighting something interesting. They swarm the Maulerfiend from all sides, shooting and chopping with joyful abandon. The demon engine kills them by the dozen, its weapons tearing through green flesh with horrifying efficiency. But for every Ork that falls, 2 more arrive to take his place. The Wag is building momentum, and the Maulerfiend finds itself in the center of a green tide that refuses to ebb. This is where the demon engine makes its first mistake, insofar as a trapped warp entity can be said to make mistakes. It is designed for surgical strikes and targeted destruction, not for sustained combat against overwhelming numbers. The demon within begins to feel something it has not experienced since its binding: uncertainty. The kills are satisfying, but there are simply too many targets, and more keep coming. Then the knobs arrive. These are the Ork equivalent of sergeants, larger and tougher than regular boys, equipped with power claws and big choppers. They see the Maulerfiend tearing through their fellows and recognize it as a challenge worthy of their attention. With bellows of "Wah!" that echo across the battlefield, they charge into melee with the demon engine. What follows is a savage brawl that would horrify any tactical officer trained in conventional warfare. There is no coordination, no careful flanking maneuvers, just Orks and demon engine tearing at each other with mutual enthusiasm. The Maulerfiend's power fists crush through Ork armor and flesh. Nob's power claws tear chunks from the demon engine's hull. The battle is brutal, close quarters, and absolutely delightful to every Ork present. But numbers begin to tell. The Maulerfiend, for all its power, is taking damage faster than its infernal regeneration can repair it. Hydraulic lines are severed. Armor plates are torn free. One of its legs is damaged, reducing its mobility. The demon within begins to feel something else it has not experienced since its binding. Pain. Not the constant agony of imprisonment, but actual damage to its mechanical prison. This is when Big Mech Drogscroll arrives with his mob of tankbusters. Drogscroll is a mech boy of considerable reputation, having looted and modified dozens of enemy vehicles during the WH. He sees the Maulerfiend, sees that it is clearly the most interesting vehicle he has encountered in years, and makes a decision that will have consequences none of them can anticipate. He wants it. Drogscroll shouts orders to his tankbusters, directing them not to destroy the demon engine, but to disable it. This requires a degree of precision that Orks are not generally known for, but tankbusters specialize in fighting vehicles and have learned where to place their rockets for maximum effect. They begin targeting the Maulerfiend's leg joints, using their weapons to blow apart the articulated limbs one by one. The demon within the Maulerfiend realizes what is happening and begins to fight with desperate savagery. It kills more Orks in the next 5 minutes than in the previous hour, its weapons tearing through green flesh in a frenzy of hatred. But it is too late. The damage is catastrophic. 3 of its 4 legs are now non-functional. It collapses onto its side, still dangerous but no longer mobile. Drogscroll approaches the fallen demon engine with the caution of a mech boy who has, on previous occasions, had explosives unexpectedly detonate in his workshop. He examines the Maulerfiend, poking at it with a wrench and studying the demon-forged mechanisms with professional interest. The other Orks have backed away, not out of fear, but because Drogscroll has claimed this prize, and any boy who challenges a Big Mech's claim is likely to get a spanner across his skull. The demon within is still very much active, still very much aware. It can sense the greenskins around it, feel their crude psychic presence pressing against its consciousness. It tries to reach out with tendrils of corruption, to influence the Orks, as it might influence humans, or even other chaos servants. It attempts to project terror, to fill their minds with visions of their deaths and promises of power if they simply release it. The Orks feel this pressure as a vague sense that the metal git is trying to tell them something, which they interpret as the machine spirit being particularly stubborn. This is not unusual in captured Imperial vehicles, and mech boys have long since developed the traditional solution: hit it harder until it stops being difficult. Drogscroll smacks the Maulerfiend's hull with his wrench, leaving a sizable dent, and declares that this is going to be a proper project. The next challenge is transportation. The Maulerfiend weighs several tons and is still intermittently trying to kill Orks with its remaining functional weapons. Drogscroll solves this problem with typical Ork ingenuity. He has his boys chain the demon engine to the back of 3 looted trucks and drag it back to the Ork encampment. The Maulerfiend leaves a trench in the ground as it is hauled away, still sparking and hissing with impotent rage. The Iron Warriors, watching this theft through augmetic sensors, are caught between fury and disbelief. A wag has stolen one of their demon engines. This should not be possible. Maulerfiends are priceless assets, products of centuries of dark knowledge and warpcraft. They are not items that can simply be looted by greenskins. The warsmith commanding the siege immediately dispatches a strike force to recover the demon engine before the Orks can do something unforgivable, like try to improve it. But the Orks have already begun setting up their defenses around the captured Maulerfiend, viewing it as the most important piece of loot they have ever acquired. Defending loot from those who want it back is, after all, one of the most fundamental parts of Ork culture. The Iron Warriors' strike force arrives to find itself facing not just the mob that captured the Maulerfiend, but half of Warboss Skarzag's Warg, all of whom have heard about the big metal git and want to see what happens next. The battle that follows is vicious, but brief. The Chaos Space Marines are outnumbered 100 to 1, and while each of them is worth a dozen Orks in combat, even traitor Astartes cannot overcome such odds. They kill scores of greenskins before being overwhelmed, pulled down by sheer weight of numbers and Ork enthusiasm. Their attempt to recover the Maulerfiend fails, and the demon engine remains in Ork hands. Back in the Ork encampment, Drogskrull has set up his workshop around the captured Maulerfiend. He has recruited a team of lesser mech boys and ordered dozens of Gretchen to begin gathering scrap metal, tools, and anything else that might be useful. The Wags. Momentum has shifted. Skarzag the Unstoppable still wants to fight the Humies in the Hive City and the Spiky Gits besieging it. But now, there is also this fascinating new project that has captured the attention of every mech boy in the Wagi each. The Maulerfiend lies in the center of the workshop, still partially functional, still containing the furious daemon that powers it. Neither it nor the Orks surrounding it truly understand what is about to happen. The collision of Ork ingenuity and chaos corruption that will produce results neither force could have predicted. The examination, when mech boys meet what should not be. The workshop that Drogskrull has established around the captured Maulerfiend is impressive by Ork standards, which means it is a barely organized chaos of tools, scrap metal, and shouting greenskins. Grot laborers scurry everywhere, hauling materials and ducking out of the way when mech boys need to throw something heavy. The air smells of promethium fumes, burning metal, and that peculiar odor that Orks carry with them, something between fungus and gunpowder. At the center of all this activity lies the Maulerfiend, still chained but showing signs of the infernal regeneration that makes demon engines so difficult to permanently disable. Its damaged legs are slowly knitting back together, metal flowing like liquid as the daemon within tries to repair its prison. This should be disturbing. To an Imperial observer, watching demon-tainted machinery heal itself would be clear evidence of warp corruption, demanding immediate purification with fire and faith. To Drogskrull, it is merely interesting. He watches the self-repair process with the analytical eye of a craftsman studying a rival's work. "That's a clever bit," he mutters to his assistant, a younger mech named Brack. "Metal what fixes itself. Could put dat on de trucks. Save us time welding when de boys crash 'em." The demon within the Maulerfiend is, for the first time since its binding, genuinely confused. It has encountered many species across its existence. Humans cower before its presence or harden themselves with faith to resist its influence. Eldar recognize what it is instantly and respond with psychic wards and soul stones. Even the Tau, those beings nearly invisible to the warp, react with horror when they comprehend what they face. But these Orks, they are poking it with sticks and discussing how to make it better. Drogskrull begins his examination methodically, or at least as methodically as an Ork can manage. He walks around the Maulerfiend, studying its construction from every angle. He taps on the armor plating with his wrench, listening to the sound and nodding with satisfaction when he hears something he likes. He examines the power fists, the magma cutters, and the lasher tendrils with professional interest. "This is proper killy," he announces to his assembled team of mech boys. "See how the claws is all connected to the power plant? And these burny things they must run real hot to cut through walls like the boys was saying. We's gonna need to check the inside, see how it all works." This is where things begin to get interesting. Drogskrull has one of his Gretchen fetch a cutting torch, and he begins burning through the access panels on the Maulerfiend's hull. The demon engine thrashes against its chains as the torch bites into its armor, but the Orks have secured it well. They learned long ago that captured vehicles often try to escape, and the solution is always more chains and heavier weights. As the access panel falls away, revealing the Maulerfiend's internal mechanisms, Drogskrull and his mech boys crowd around to peer inside. What they see should be impossible to comprehend for greenskins who have no concept of warpcraft or demonic possession. The interior of the Maulerfiend is not simply mechanical components. It is a fusion of technology and something else. Cables and pipes intertwined with what looks like organic matter, runes of binding, etched into every surface, and at the very center, something that is neither metal nor flesh, but somehow both. A human witnessing this might have felt their sanity beginning to slip. The geometries are wrong, angles meeting in ways that should not be possible in three-dimensional space. Colors that have no name in human language shift, and pulse in the shadows. The air emanating from the demon engine carries a psychic weight that presses on the soul like a physical thing. The mech boys lean in closer, fascinated. "What's all this wiggly stuff?" asks Brack, pointing at what might be cables, or might be veins, or might be something else entirely. He reaches out to touch it, and the demon within the Maulerfiend seizes its opportunity. With a surge of effort, the demon pushes its consciousness forward, reaching out through the connection Brack has foolishly established. It will possess this crude greenskin, use his body to break its chains, and then slaughter every orc in the vicinity before, returning to its chaos masters. This is a strategy it has employed before when its mechanical prison was breached for repairs or inspection. The possession attempt hits the WH40K field around Brack, like a swimming human hitting a brick wall. The demon recoils, genuinely startled. Every orc is surrounded by a bubble of WH40K energy, a psychic field generated by their race's collective consciousness. Normally, this field is fairly passive, simply making orc technology work better and allowing them to instinctively recognize which orc is biggest and therefore in charge. But when threatened, when something actively tries to invade an orc's mind, the WH40K field can respond with surprising vigor. The demon finds itself not possessing Brack, but instead caught in a psychic environment that is fundamentally hostile to its nature. The WH40K field does not reject the demon through faith or magical wards. It rejects the demon because the demon is not orky, and things that are not orky do not belong in orc heads. The distinction might seem subtle, but it represents a fundamental difference in approach. Chaos corruption works by offering something the victim wants: power, pleasure, freedom from pain, knowledge, glory. It worms its way into the cracks of the psyche and exploits them. But orcs do not have the psychological complexity that chaos normally feeds on. They do not dream of power because they take it through strength. They do not desire pleasure beyond a good fight. They do not fear death because dying in battle is a perfectly acceptable outcome. They do not seek knowledge for its own sake because they already know everything they need: how to fight, how to build things that fight, and how to find more things to fight. The demon withdraws, frustrated and more confused than ever. It tries a different approach, attempting to fill the orcs' minds with visions of what it could offer them: weapons of unimaginable power, immortality in service to the dark gods, victory over every enemy they have ever faced. Drogscroll pauses in his examination, his face screwed up in concentration as he tries to process these alien thoughts. "What's it going on about?" he asks Brack. "Some think about power and winning. We already got power. See this wrench? Dead killy, that is. And we already win lots of fights. That's what orcs do." Brack nods in agreement. "I think the metal gets trying to tell us it wants to help. Probably the machine spirit waking up now we's looking at it proper." This is not an entirely inaccurate interpretation, though it misses the horrifying reality of what the machine spirit actually is. To the mech boys, a machine spirit is simply the personality that all sufficiently complex technology develops. Imperial vehicles have machine spirits. Orc vehicles have machine spirits. It stands to reason that this big metal git would have one too, and a particularly strong one, given how killy it is. Drogscroll reaches into the Maulerfiend's interior and begins poking at components, trying to understand how everything connects. "See? This bit here connects to that bit there, and when it works, it makes the whole thing move real fast. But the real question is, why's it only got 4 legs? 6 would be better. Maybe 8. We could make it into a proper spider tank." The demon within the Maulerfiend experiences something it has not felt in time immemorial: existential dread. These creatures are discussing how to improve it. They are looking at the sacred bindings that hold it imprisoned, the runes carved by warpsmiths who spent centuries mastering the art of demon binding, and they are treating them like interesting decorations. One of the Gretchen has started scraping rust off a binding rune with a wire brush, and nobody has stopped him. Over the next several hours, Drogscrawl's team conducts what they consider a thorough examination of the Maulerfiend. They map out its systems, take notes, in the form of crude drawings that would make and Saul, Adeptus Mechanicus Magos weep, and begin formulating plans for improvements. The demon tries multiple times to influence them, corrupt them, or at least make them understand that they are playing with forces beyond their comprehension. But the Orks remain cheerfully oblivious, protected by a combination of the WH field and their fundamental inability to comprehend why anyone would worship chaos when you could just have a good fight instead. Brack discovers something particularly interesting during his examination of the power systems. "Boss, look at this. The Bernie bits, the magma cutters, they run off this weird energy thing. It's like..." He struggles to find words for something he can sense but not articulate. Like it's angry all the time. Real angry. That's what makes it cut so good. Drogscroll examines the power core more closely, feeling the malevolent energy radiating from it. A human psycho would sense the demon's essence, compressed and twisted to provide motive force for the weapon systems. Drogscroll just thinks it is a particularly aggressive machine spirit. "Right, we can work with that. If we make it more angry, it'll cut even better. I got some ideas." This is the moment when the demon within the Maulerfiend begins to understand the true horror of its situation. These Orks are not trying to unbind it or destroy it. They are not attempting to communicate with it or make pacts with it. They are planning to modify it, to alter the carefully crafted prison that has held it for decades, with no understanding of what they are doing or what the consequences might be. And the worst part, the truly terrifying part, is that they might actually succeed. The WH field that protects the Orks from its attempts at corruption is the same field that makes impossible Ork technology function. If they start altering the demon engine's construction, adding their crude modifications and shouting, "Wah!" while they do it, there is no telling what might happen. Drogscroll steps back from the Maulerfiend, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Right, boys, I've seen enough. We's gonna make this thing proper orky. More dakka, more choppy bits, maybe some flames painted on the side to make it go faster. And we's gonna make it bigger, 'cause bigger is always better." The other mech boys cheer at this pronouncement. The assembled Gretchen scurry to begin gathering materials. The demon within the Maulerfiend, for the first time in its existence, considers that perhaps its imprisonment in a demon engine was not the worst fate that could have befallen it. At least the warpsmiths who created it understood what they were doing. The Orks do not, and they are about to prove that in the grim darkness of the far future, good intentions and complete ignorance can be just as dangerous as malevolent intelligence. The Orkification, improving the unimprovable. The transformation of the Maulerfiend begins at dawn the next day, though dawn is a relative term in the smoke-choked war zone that Gorgath Prime has become. Drogscroll arrives at his workshop with a tankard of fungus beer in one hand and a lengthy list of modifications in the other. The list is written in crude Ork glyphs that probably would not make sense to anyone who was not a mech boy, but Drogscroll has memorized it anyway. This is going to be his masterpiece. The first order of business is making the Maulerfiend mobile again. The damage inflicted during its capture has been partially repaired by the demon's regeneration, but 2 of its legs are still non-functional. A human engineer might attempt to repair the legs to their original specifications. An Ork mech boy sees this as an opportunity to improve them. "Right," Drogscroll announces, gesturing at the damaged limbs. "These legs is too weedy. We're gonna make 'em proper strong. Brack, go get me them pistons we pulled off the killer can what exploded last week, and some of that armor platin from the looted Lehman Russ, and all that hydraulic fluid we got. We's gonna need lots." The demon within the Maulerfiend feels the Orks begin to work on its prison, and tries once again to resist. It sends psychic pulses of hatred and rage through the structure, attempting to make the metal burn hot enough to force the Orks away. This works on the Gretchen, several of whom yelp and drop their tools, but the mech boys simply hit the chassis with their wrenches and tell the machine spirit to stop being difficult. The WH field around the workshop has been growing stronger as more Orks come to watch the proceedings. Word has spread throughout the encampment that Big Mech Drogscroll is working on something special, and every Ork wants to see what will happen. Some bring fungus beer to share. Others bring scrap metal they have scavenged, offering it as contributions to the project. The enthusiasm is palpable, and with that enthusiasm comes an increase in the psychic energy field that makes Ork technology function. Drogscroll and his team begin the process of replacing the Maulerfiend's damaged legs. This involves cutting away the original limbs with plasma torches, a process that the demon experiences as agony. Its attempts to regenerate the damage are thwarted by the Orks simply cutting faster than it can heal. When the limbs are finally removed, Drogscroll examines the attachment points with satisfaction. Good fittings, Daisy. Real solid. We can work with that. He gestures to his team, and they begin installing the new legs. These are not exact replacements. They are twice as thick, reinforced with armor plating scavenged from a destroyed tank, powered by hydraulic systems designed for much larger vehicles. By any reasonable standard of engineering, they should be too heavy for the Maulerfiend's frame to support. The additional weight should overload the power systems and cause catastrophic failure. But the mech boys believe the new legs will work better, and they are installing them while surrounded by hundreds of Orks, who also believe the new legs will work better. The way our ag field responds to this collective belief, and reality adjusts accordingly. The oversized legs attach to the existing framework with concerning ease, and when Drogscroll activates the test systems, they move smoothly despite having no business doing so. The demon within experiences this modification with a mixture of horror and confusion. Its prison is being altered in ways that violate every principle of demon engine construction. The binding runes that hold it are being disrupted. The carefully balanced systems that channel its essence into the weapons are being rewired by greenskins who cannot possibly understand what they are doing. And yet, it is still bound, still trapped. But the nature of the prison is changing, and the demon cannot predict what that will mean. Next comes the armor plating. The Maulerfiend's original armor is formidable, blessed by dark apostles and inscribed with words of power in the dark tongue. Drogscroll looks at this armor and declares it too boring. Needs more spikes, he says, and immediately sets his team to work welding additional armor plates onto every surface they can reach. These plates are painted in bright Ork colors, covered with crude glyphs, and studded with spikes that serve no purpose except to make the machine look more aggressive. During this process, several of the binding runes are accidentally ground off or covered over. The demon feels its prison loosening, the constraints that hold it weakening. For a moment, it considers that this might be its chance to break free. But then the Orks finish their welding, and the demon realizes with growing dread that while the original bindings are gone, something else has taken their place. The Warg field is seeping into the very structure of the demon engine. The collective belief of the Orks that this machine will work, that it will be orky and killy and effective, is becoming woven into the warp and weft of its existence. The demon is no longer held in place solely by chaos sorcery. It is also held by the absolute conviction of hundreds of Orks that it is a proper good machine that will work exactly as they expect it to. The weapon systems receive similar treatment. Drogscroll examines the power fists and declares them almost good enough, which is high praise from an Ork. He has his team install additional blades on the knuckles because more choppy bits are always better. The magma cutters are kept largely intact, though he adds some extra fuel lines that probably will not explode. The lasher tendrils are studied with great interest before Drogscroll decides to add some electrified chains to them, reasoning that if hitting things is good, hitting things while electrocuting them is better. Then comes the innovation that truly sets Drogscroll's modification apart from simple looting. He decides to add more weapons, many more weapons. The Maulerfiend was designed as a melee weapon platform, intended to close with the enemy and tear them apart in close combat. But from an Ork perspective, this is wasting perfectly good surfaces that could have guns mounted on them. Right, boys, Drogscroll announces, pulling out his plans. We's gonna mount big shooters here, here, and here. He points at the Maulerfiend's back, sides, and the top of its carapace. And I want a custom mega blaster on each shoulder, and some rockets, because you can never have too many rockets, and maybe a force field generator if we can find one what works. The demon within the Maulerfiend is at this point beyond shock. It has moved into a state that might best be described as resigned horror. These creatures are mounting guns onto it. Crude, ugly, poorly designed guns that look like they were assembled by a deranged child with access to a welding torch. And yet, when the Orks test fire the weapons, they work. They work surprisingly well. The big shooters roar with satisfying volume. The custom mega blasters discharge bolts of crackling energy, and the rockets fly, more or less, in the direction they are aimed at. Over the course of 3 days, the Maulerfiend is transformed from a demon engine of chaos into something that is unquestionably orky. It is larger, painted in garish colors, covered with spikes and glyphs, and bristling with so many weapons that it looks like a mobile arsenal. The original quadrupedal design is still there, but enhanced with reinforced legs that can support its increased mass. The demon's essence remains bound within, but now constrained by a combination of weakened chaos sorcery and powerful orc belief. Drogscroll stands back to admire his handiwork. "Now that's proper," he says with satisfaction. He has added flames painted on the sides, because red makes things go faster, even though the Maulerfiend is not red. He has welded a massive orc jaw around the front of the carapace, so it looks like it is roaring. He has hung chains and trophies from every available surface, giving it the appearance of a mobile scrapyard. The demon within should not exist in this form. By every rule of demon binding and warpcraft, what the Orks have done should have either released it entirely or destroyed it. The binding runes are compromised. The power systems are altered. The entire structure has been modified beyond recognition. And yet the demon remains trapped, its consciousness still imprisoned, but now in a form that is part chaos creation, part orc engineering, and entirely unprecedented in the 41st millennium. During the final stages of modification, something unexpected begins to happen. The demon's fury, compressed and directed through the weapon systems, starts to resonate with the Wagi field. The demon does not understand this interaction because demons do not experience reality the way material beings do. But the Orks can feel it. The machine seems angry in a way that feels almost orky. It is not the cold, malevolent hatred of chaos. It is something more immediate, more primal. The fury of a creature that wants to destroy everything in its path simply because destruction is its purpose. Brack comments on this during the final testing phase. "Boss, the machine spirit on this thing is really mean, like properly mean. It wants to crump things real bad." Drogscroll nods sagely. "That's good. Mean machine spirits make for killy weapons. Just needs to learn who it's supposed to be crumping. We'll teach it once we get it into a proper scrap." The demon, hearing this through its haze of imprisoned consciousness, would laugh if it still possessed the anatomy for laughter. These Orks think they can teach it? It is an entity of the warp, ancient beyond their comprehension, forged in the hatred of the dark gods themselves. It cannot be taught. It cannot be changed. But even as it thinks this, the demon becomes aware of something disturbing. The Wagj field is not simply containing it anymore. It is beginning to suffuse it. The demon's essence, compressed into the mechanical framework, is being exposed to a form of psychic energy it has never encountered before. Chaos corruption spreads through negative emotions: despair, rage, pride, excess. The Wagar field is not a negative emotion. It is not really an emotion at all. It is pure, distilled enthusiasm for violence, untainted by the psychological complexity that makes corruption possible. What happens when an immortal entity of hatred meets a force of uncomplicated joy and destruction? The galaxy is about to find out. Drogscroll makes the final modifications to the Maulerfiend's control systems. He installs a steering mechanism that consists of a large stick connected to the leg servos by chains and some gears that probably came from a looted truck. He adds pedals that control the speed, because that is how vehicles work, obviously. He installs a big red button prominently on the control panel, though nobody is entirely certain what it does. It probably activates something explosive. The last touch is painting the name on the side in crude orc glyphs. Smashy. Drogscroll wanted to call it something more elaborate, but the other mech boys argued that it should have a simple name since it does simple things. It smashes stuff. The compromise is to add "da bestest" in smaller letters underneath. The modifications are complete. What was once a Maulerfiend, a demon engine of the Iron Warriors, has become Smashy da bestest, a looted and heavily modified vehicle that exists in a state that demon binders and tech priests would both declare impossible. It is larger than it was, heavier than it should be able to move, covered with weapons that should not all function together, and powered by a combination of demon essence and pure orc belief. Drogscroll climbs into the control area, which is less a cockpit and more a space where an orc can sit surrounded by levers and buttons. He grabs the steering stick, stomps on the pedals, and feels the machine respond. The legs move, the weapon systems activate. Everything works, despite having absolutely no business working. "Right then!" he shouts to the assembled orcs, who have gathered to watch this momentous occasion. "Let's go find something to test this on!" The demon within Smashy da bestest, still trapped but now in a form it never could have imagined, makes one last attempt to resist. It pushes against the bindings, both the weakened chaos runes and the vague field that has become part of its prison. It tries to flood the control systems with warp energy to seize control from the greenskin who dares to pilot it. The vague field, now interwoven with every component of the modified demon engine, pushes back. And for the first time since its binding, the demon hears something that is not the cold commands of its chaos masters or the terrified screams of its victims. It hears hundreds of orc voices shouting in unison. "Wag!" Smashy da bestest lurches forward, moving with surprising speed despite its increased bulk. The demon is not in control, but neither are the orcs, not entirely. Something else is operating the machine, something that is part demon, part wag field, and all violence waiting to happen. The testing is about to begin, and the results will be memorable. The warp meets the unprecedented interactions. The interaction between chaos corruption and the orc field represents one of the most fascinating and least understood phenomena in the 41st millennium. Under normal circumstances, these two forces do not coexist. They exist in separate spheres of influence, with chaos working through corruption, temptation, and the exploitation of negative emotions, while the each operates through collective enthusiasm and the reality-bending power of orc belief. But within Smashy da bestest, these forces are not separate. They are occupying the same physical space, intertwined in ways that should not be possible. The demon trapped within the modified Maulerfiend experiences this coexistence as a constant, grinding pressure against its consciousness. It is not being destroyed or banished. The wag field is not holy or pure in the way that faith-based anti-chaos measures are. Instead, it is being compressed, its malevolence forced into channels and patterns dictated not by chaos sorcery, but by orc expectations. In the original Maulerfiend, the demon's hatred was carefully directed through weapon systems and movement controls by warpsmiths who understood how to channel warp energy into physical effects. In Smashy da bestest, this precision has been replaced by something far more crude and, paradoxically, more effective. The orcs expect the machine to move fast, so it moves fast. They expect the weapons to work, so the weapons work. They expect the machine spirit to be mean and killy, so the demon's malevolence is expressed through increased aggression rather than attempted corruption. Over the following days, as Drogscroll runs Smashy through a series of tests, a pattern begins to emerge. The demon is still present, still conscious, still filled with hatred. But that hatred is being shaped and directed by the wag field. in ways the demon does not entirely control. When Drogscroll points the machine at a target and shouts, "Smash that!" the demon finds its essence surging toward that target with the enthusiasm that feels alien. It wants to destroy the target, not because destruction is its nature, but because destroying things is what orcs do, and the machine is becoming, in some indefinable way, orky. This should not be happening. Demons are immortal entities of the warp, unchangeable in their fundamental nature. They can be bound, banished, or destroyed, but they cannot be altered. A demon of Horn will always be a being of rage and bloodlust. A demon of Nurgle will always embody despair and entropy. The demon within Smashy Dar, bestest, is still these things, but it is also becoming something else. Something that the galaxy has never seen before and was never meant to exist. The Orks notice none of this complexity. To them, Smashy is simply a really good machine with a particularly aggressive machine spirit. Drogscroll learns to work with this aggression, discovering that if he shouts, "Wag!" while activating the weapons, they fire with increased effectiveness. The other mech boys note this and begin suggesting other combat shouty, orc war cries that might improve performance. They are, unknowingly, conducting experiments in how the WH40K field interacts with demon essence. During a test run against some abandoned Imperial fortifications, Smashy demonstrates capabilities that surprise even Drogscroll. The machine moves with predatory intelligence, anticipating obstacles and adjusting its approach without needing detailed commands. It uses its weapons in combinations that show tactical awareness. When a section of wall collapses unexpectedly, Smashy adjusts its footing to maintain balance without being told to do so. "Soggenel," mutters Drogscroll, genuinely impressed. "Dis machine spirit is proper smart. It knows what needs crumpin' before I even tell it." What he interprets as intelligence is actually the demon's consciousness, still active and aware, but now filtered through the WH40K field. The demon has spent enough time surrounded by orcs to begin understanding how they think, and it has discovered something troubling. Fighting the WH40K field is exhausting and ultimately futile, but working with it, channeling its own destructive impulses through the patterns the field creates, is far more effective. The demon has not been corrupted in any conventional sense. It has not sworn loyalty to Gork and Mork. It has not abandoned chaos. But it has begun to adapt to its new situation, and in adapting, it is changing. The change is subtle, incremental, but it is happening. The demon's hatred is becoming less nihilistic and more focused. It is developing something that might almost be called preferences. It dislikes being idle. It enjoys the sensation of destroying targets. It finds satisfaction in performing well, in exceeding the expectations of the orcs who operate it. These feelings disturb the demon deeply. It should not have preferences. It should not care about performance or satisfaction. These are concepts from the material realm, concerns of mortal beings with flesh and limited lifespans. Demons exist beyond such petty considerations. Yet here, trapped in this modified shell and suffused with WH40K energy, the demon finds itself developing traits that feel uncomfortably like personality. The other orcs begin to notice that Smashy has quirks. It performs better when painted red, even though it is mostly green and yellow. It seems to enjoy fighting certain types of enemies more than others. It occasionally makes sounds that, while not quite words, seem almost like it is trying to communicate. The mech boys discuss these observations with great interest, treating them as evidence of a particularly strong machine spirit, rather than signs of a demon struggling with an identity crisis. The situation becomes more complex when Warboss Skarzag announces that the WH is going to attack the Iron Warriors' siege lines. This is not strategic planning. Skarzag does not care about the tactical situation or the fate of the human defenders. He simply knows that the spiky gits have good weapons and lots of things to fight, which makes them the best target for a proper scrap. Drogscroll is told to bring Smashy along to demonstrate what his best creation can do. The demon within Smashy hears this plan and experiences something it has not felt since its original binding: anticipation. Not the anticipation of escape or revenge, but the anticipation of battle. It has been created to fight, modified to fight, and now it is being taken into a situation where it will face the very forces that originally created it. The Chaos Space Marines will recognize what it once was. They will see the abomination it has become. And the demon finds itself curious about how they will respond. This curiosity is new. Daemons do not generally experience curiosity. They experience hunger, rage, pride, despair, but not curiosity. Curiosity implies interest in unknown outcomes, a recognition that the future is uncertain and potentially interesting. It is a mortal emotion, born of limited knowledge and finite existence. The demon should not be feeling it. But the WH40K field has been saturating the demon's consciousness for days now, exposing it to the collective psychic presence of thousands of orcs. And orcs are, in their own way, deeply curious creatures. They wonder what happens if you add more Daka. They question whether painting something red really does make it go faster. They experiment with new weapon combinations to see which ones explode in the most satisfying ways. This curiosity is not scientific or methodical, but it is genuine, and through prolonged exposure to the WH40K field, the demon is absorbing it. On the eve of the battle, Drogskrull performs maintenance on Smashy, checking weapon systems and making minor adjustments. As he works, he talks to the machine, explaining what they will be fighting and what he expects from it. This is normal behavior for mech boys, who often speak to their creations as if they are living things. What is not normal is that the demon within Smashy is listening and, more disturbingly, understanding. "Right, Smashy," Drogskrull says, tightening a bolt on one of the big shooters. "Tomorrow we's gonna fight the spiky gits. They got good armor and lots of Daka, so we's gonna need to be proper killy. You smash through their lines, and I'll shoot the guns at whatever looks mean. We're gonna show 'em that Orks is the best at crumping things." The demon, hearing this, processes the information. It recognizes the iron. Warriors will be present. It knows their tactics and their demon engines. It once fought alongside such forces. Now, it will fight against them. And bound within this orcified shell, infused with WH40K energy, the demon discovers it does not feel conflicted about this betrayal. Chaos demands loyalty through fear and offerings of power. The WH40K field does not demand anything. It simply is, a constant psychic pressure that has worn away the sharp edges of the demon's malevolence and replaced them with something rougher and more orky. The demon has not rejected chaos. It has not embraced the orcs' crude gods. It has simply stopped caring about such distinctions because caring requires energy that could be better spent on violence. This apathy is, in its own way, the most significant change. Demons are beings of intense passion, whether that passion is rage or despair or ambition. Apathy is anathema to their nature. Yet here, suffused with WH40K energy and shaped by orc expectations, the demon within Smashy has developed the capacity to not care about things beyond its immediate function. It will fight. It will destroy. It will do these things with enthusiasm and efficiency. But it will do them because destroying things is satisfying, not because it serves any greater purpose or ideology. In the silence of the night, as the orcs sleep and the workshops grow quiet, Smashy stands motionless in its moorings. The demon within contemplates its situation with something approaching acceptance. It is still bound, still imprisoned, but the nature of the imprisonment has changed so fundamentally that it might as well be a different existence entirely. Tomorrow, it will fight Chaos Space Marines while controlled by orcs and powered by a combination of warp essence and WH40K energy. This should not be possible. By every law of the Materium and Immaterium, This situation violates fundamental principles of how reality operates. But in the 41st millennium, where the galaxy burns and impossibility is just another challenge to overcome, the unlikely and the unprecedented happen with alarming frequency. Smashy da Bestest is simply the latest example of the universe demonstrating that the rules, such as they are, can be broken in spectacular fashion when sufficient ignorance and enthusiasm are applied. The demon would sigh if it still had breath. Instead, it simply waits for morning and the battle to come, anticipating with something that might almost be called eagerness, the opportunity to show the Iron Warriors what their prized demon engine has become in Orc hands. The battle test. Smashy goes to war. The attack on the Iron Warriors' siege lines begins in the traditional Orc fashion, with minimal planning, maximum enthusiasm, and enough Daka to deafen anyone unfortunate enough to be nearby. Warboss Skarzag leads the charge personally, surrounded by his nobs and followed by thousands of boys who are all absolutely convinced this is going to be the best fight they have had in weeks. The Iron Warriors, having spent 3 months methodically besieging the Hive city, find their carefully organized front lines suddenly swarmed by a green tide that cares nothing for tactics or casualty rates. Drog Skrull pilots smashy da Bestest into the middle of this glorious chaos. The modified demon engine moves with surprising speed despite its increased bulk, its new reinforced legs pounding across the battlefield with mechanical precision. Behind Drogskroll rides a mob of boys who have claimed spots on Smashy's hull, hanging onto the added armor plates and firing their sluggers at anything that looks like a target. The demon within experiences the sensation of charging into battle surrounded by shouting orcs, and something fundamental shifts in its consciousness. This is what it was created for, not by the warpsmiths who bound it, but by whatever cosmic forces shaped the warp itself. It is a creature of destruction, and destruction is finally being unleashed in the most comprehensive way possible. The Wag field pulses with energy as thousands of orcs engage the enemy. This is not the background hum that the demon has grown accustomed to over the past weeks. This is the full power of a Wag in combat, a psychic pressure so intense that it makes reality itself malleable. Guns that should jam fire perfectly. Vehicles that should stall keep running. Orcs who should be exhausted find new energy. And Smashy, at the center of this field, feels its capabilities expand beyond anything the original Maulerfiend could have achieved. The first Iron Warriors Smashy encounters are a squad of Chaos Space Marines holding a fortified position overlooking the battlefield. They see the approaching demon engine and initially mistake it for one of their own that has somehow broken containment. Then they notice the garish paint job, the orc glyphs, and the boys hanging off its hull, and their confusion turns to outrage. "That is the Maulerfiend taken from us," voxes one of the warriors. "It has been corrupted by the greenskins. This is an abomination beyond tolerance." The squad opens fire with bolters and lascannons, attempting to destroy the demon engine before it can close the distance. Their shots are accurate and well placed, targeting the joints and weapon mounts with the precision expected of Chaos Space Marines. Under normal circumstances, this concentrated fire would seriously damage a Maulerfiend. But Smashy is no longer normal in any sense of the word. The WH field has made it tougher, more resilient, more capable of shrugging off damage that should be crippling. Shots that should penetrate its armor spark off harmlessly or punch through added plating that was never part of the original design. The demon within feels the impacts and channels its rage through the weapon systems, which Drogskroll activates with enthusiastic abandon. The big shooters open up first, filling the air with bullets that have no business being as accurate as they are. The custom Mega Blasters discharge crackling bolts of energy that would make a tech priest weep at their complete disregard for safety protocols. The rockets launch with plumes of flame and smoke, spiraling through the air in trajectories that defy aerodynamics. None of these weapons are sophisticated. Most of them should not work at all. But the orcs believe they will work, The WH40K field makes that belief reality, and the Chaos Space Marines find themselves under fire from an arsenal that operates on principles they cannot comprehend. "That's right," shouts Drogscrawl, maneuvering Smashy closer to the fortification. "This is proper orc shooting. Wag!" The boys riding on Smashy's hull echo his war cry, and the wag field pulses stronger. The demon within feels this pulse and does something it never expected. It responds, not with an attempt to break free or corrupt, but with its own surge of destructive energy. The magma cutters, already hot, burn even brighter. The power fists crackle with increased energy. Every weapon system seems to hit harder, fire faster, and cause more damage than it should. Smashy crashes into the Iron Warrior's position like a landslide with attitude. The power fists smash through fortifications that were built to withstand orbital bombardment. The magma cutters slice through ceramite armor with ease. The lasher tendrils, enhanced with electrified chains, sweep Chaos Space Marines off their feet and send them tumbling down the defensive embankment. It is brutally efficient carnage, and the demon is enjoying every moment of it. This enjoyment is novel. Demons experience satisfaction from destruction, but it is usually a cold satisfaction, the fulfillment of their nature without emotional attachment. What the demon within Smashy is feeling is different. It is the joy of a job well done, the pride of effective performance, the thrill of exceeding expectations. These are mortal emotions born of ego and social context. The demon should not be capable of them. But surrounded by orcs who are cheering and shooting and having the absolute time of their lives, exposed to the wage field at its most potent, the demon finds these emotions bleeding through into its consciousness. It is not becoming orky in any metaphysical sense. It is not worshipping Gork and Mork or embracing greenskin philosophy. It is simply, gradually, beginning to understand why orcs fight the way they do. The Iron Warriors regroup and deploy one of their own demon engines in response, a Forge Fiend designed for ranged combat. The two engines face each other across the battlefield, one pristine and purposeful in its design, the other a ramshackle parody festooned with orc modifications. The Forge Fiend's operator recognizes what Smashy once was and speaks through the Vox system. Maulerfiend, designated Warp Talon 7, respond. You have been compromised. Return to base for reconditioning or face destruction. Drogscrawl, hearing this garbled noise from the enemy, interprets it as threats and taunts. Oi, you think you're tough, Metal Git? Smashy here's gonna show you what for. Let's get him, Smashy. The demon within Smashy hears the Forge Fiend's call and recognizes it for what it is, an attempt to reassert control, to remind it of its original purpose and loyalty. In response, the demon does something that surprises even itself. Through the weapons systems that it now shares control of with Drogscrawl, it targets the Forge Fiend and fires. This is rebellion. Not the calculated rebellion of a demon seeking freedom from its bonds, but something more immediate and visceral. The demon is rejecting the authority of its chaos masters, not because it has found something better, but because being operated by enthusiastic orcs in the middle of a wah is more satisfying than serving cold, calculating Chaos Space Marines who value it only as a tool. The battle between Smashy and the Forge Fiend is spectacular and brief. The Forge Fiend opens fire with its ectoplasma cannons, weapons designed to reduce infantry to molten slag. Smashy charges forward with its oversized legs pumping, closing the distance with speed that should not be possible for something of its mass. The demon uses its knowledge of demon engine design to anticipate the Forge Fiend's movements, while Drogscrawl uses his orcish instincts to aim and fire with surprising effectiveness. The Forge Fiend's shots hit home, melting through added armor plates and exposed hydraulics. But the damage is not as catastrophic as it should be. The WAG field is protecting Smashy, reality bending slightly to accommodate the collective orc belief that their machine can take the hits. Meanwhile, Smashy's weapons are tearing into the Forgefiend with abandon. The custom Mega Blasters, overloading its shields while the big shooters chew through its carapace. When Smashy closes to melee range, the outcome is inevitable. The reinforced power fists, already formidable, punch through the Forgefiend's armor with ridiculous ease. The magma cutters burn through internal components. Within moments, the Forgefiend is disabled, its demon banished back to the warp as its physical prison is destroyed. The demon within Smashy feels the other demon's essence dissipate and experiences something like triumph. It has defeated a peer, demonstrated its superiority, proven its worth. These feelings are complicated by the knowledge that it achieved this victory while being operated by Orks and powered by a psychic field that has nothing to do with chaos. The triumph is tinged with existential confusion. Drogskroll, oblivious to the metaphysical crisis happening inside his vehicle, simply cheers. Ha! That's what you get for messing with Smashy the bestest. Come on, boys. Let's find more things to crump. The battle continues throughout the day, with Smashy proving itself, repeatedly against Iron Warriors' positions. The Chaos Space Marines adapt their tactics, attempting to trap or isolate the demon engine, but the sheer unpredictability of Orc warfare makes this difficult. Smashy does not follow predictable patterns because Drogskroll does not think tactically. He simply points the machine at whatever looks like it needs smashing and charges forward with absolute confidence that everything will work out. And, remarkably, it does. The WH40K field makes Smashy more effective than any demon engine has a right to be. The modifications that should have weakened it instead make it stronger. The daemon's hatred, channeled through Orc expectations and enhanced by WH40K energy, produces results that terrify even the traitor Astartes. By nightfall, the Iron Warriors have withdrawn from their siege lines, forced back by the sheer momentum of the Orc assault. They leave behind damaged vehicles, fallen warriors, and the growing realization that one of their daemon engines has been irrevocably corrupted by greenskin culture. Not destroyed, not banished. Corrupted in a way they do not have words to describe. Smashy the bestest stands in the middle of the captured siege works, covered in damage and battle marks, its weapons still smoking. The Orcs celebrate around it, claiming victory and arguing about who killed the most gits. Drogskroll climbs down from the control position, exhausted but exhilarated, and pats Smashy's hull affectionately. "You did good, Smashy. Proper good. Tomorrow we'll fix the bits what broke and add even more Daka. Maybe some flame things on the side. Flames is always good." The daemon within, hearing this, does not resist or rage against its fate. It simply accepts that tomorrow it will be modified further, that its existence will continue to diverge from what it was originally created to be, and that this trajectory is now inevitable. It has been changed by prolonged exposure to the WH40K, shaped by Orc expectations, and transformed into something that the galaxy has never seen before. A demon engine that works better in Orc hands than it ever did in Chaos hands. An abomination that has become even more abominable through the application of Orc ingenuity. A weapon that has learned, in its own strange way, that sometimes the best way to serve destruction is to stop caring who you are destroying it for and simply enjoy the process of destroying. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and sometimes that war produces results so bizarre that even the dark gods themselves must pause and wonder what exactly just happened. Broader implications, what this means for the galaxy. The capture and modification of a Maulerfiend by Orks is not merely an isolated incident of greenskin opportunism. It represents something far more significant, a proof of concept that challenges fundamental assumptions about the nature of chaos corruption, demon binding, and the WH40K field itself. While individual instances like Smashy the bestest are rare, the implications ripple outward through the strategic calculations of every major power in the galaxy. For the Imperium of man, The concept of orcs successfully looting and operating demon engines is deeply troubling. The Inquisition maintains extensive archives on chaos corruption, documenting how it spreads and how it must be countered. The standard response to demon engines is destruction, followed by purification. The very idea that greenskins could capture such weapons and make them work better through crude modification contradicts established doctrine. Tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus find the situation particularly offensive. Their entire philosophy revolves around the sanctity of established patterns and the machine spirits that inhabit technology. The notion that orcs can take a demon engine, fundamentally alter its construction with no understanding of the underlying principles, and produce something more effective through sheer belief is heretical on multiple levels. It suggests that faith in the machine god might be less important than the collective conviction that technology should work. For the forces of chaos, orc looting of demon engines represents both insult and opportunity. On one hand, seeing their prized weapons turned into gaudy parodies festooned with orc glyphs is enraging. The Iron Warriors, who lost the original Maulerfiend, spend the following months attempting to track down Smashy and reclaim it, though these attempts fail with impressive regularity. On the other hand, some chaos sorcerers begin to wonder if the orcs' approach to modifying demon engines could teach them something about the malleability of warp-bound entities. The incident raises questions about the fundamental nature of demon binding that warpsmiths would prefer remain unexamined. Demon engines are created through specific rituals and binding runes, following principles developed over millennia of study. The idea that these carefully constructed prisons can be altered through crude welding and additions of random components, stabilized not through sorcery, but through orc belief, suggests that demon binding might be less about technical precision and more about imposing will on warp entities. If orcs can do it through collective psychic conviction, what does that say about the painstaking rituals chaos forces employ? From the perspective of the Eldar, who understand the warp in ways other races cannot match, the orc modification of demon engines is fascinating and horrifying in equal measure. Eldar farseers, examining the psychic echoes of incidents like Smashy's creation, note the unprecedented interaction between WH energy and daemonic essence. They document cases where demon engines operated by orcs begin to exhibit behavioral patterns that suggest the warp entities within are being fundamentally altered by prolonged exposure to the Gestalt psychic field. This has implications for the Eldar's own understanding of how the warp works. They have always known that orcs possess a unique relationship with psychic power, but seeing it directly reshape a bound demon suggests that the WH field is more potent than previously believed. Some farseers begin developing theories about whether concentrated WH energy could be weaponized against chaos forces, though the practical difficulties of convincing orcs to fight specific targets make this largely academic. The orcs themselves, naturally, care nothing for these strategic implications. To them, Smashy is simply proof that looted technology can be improved through the proper application of hammers, welding torches, and absolute conviction. Other mech boys throughout the galaxy hear about Drogscroll's success and begin looking for demon engines to loot themselves. Most of these attempts end in disaster, as demon engines are dangerous opponents that require substantial numbers to overwhelm. But occasional successes create more orc-modified demon engines, each one a unique blend of chaos machinery and greenskin modifications. These successes have a cumulative effect on orc technology. Mech boys who successfully modify demon engines gain prestige and followers, leading to the formation of specialized groups within orc society that focus on looting and modifying the enemy's most dangerous weapons. They develop techniques for disabling demon engines without destroying them, methods for containing the bound demons during modification, and an intuitive understanding of how to make demon-powered weapon systems work within the WH field. More troubling is what happens to the demons themselves. Long-term exposure to WH energy appears to have lasting effects on warp entities. even after the demon engine is destroyed, and the daemon returns to the Imperium. Some Chaos sorcerers report that demons summoned from areas where Orks have captured and modified demon engines behave strangely, showing increased aggression but decreased cunning, as if they have absorbed some quality of orkishness during their imprisonment. This phenomenon has sparked debate among those who study the warp about whether exposure to WH energy can permanently alter demonic essence. Traditional understanding holds that demons are immutable expressions of conceptual forces, unchangeable in their fundamental nature. But if prolonged exposure to Ork psychic fields can modify demon behavior in lasting ways, it suggests the warp itself might be more malleable than previously believed. The Tau, ever pragmatic, view Ork-modified demon engines as evidence for their hypothesis that both Orks and Chaos forces represent backwards thinking that hinders technological progress. They argue that instead of stealing and modifying captured technology, all races should embrace the greater good and share innovations openly. This perspective completely misses the point, but nobody expects the Tau to understand the complex interaction of warp forces and Gestalt psychic fields anyway. For the Necrons, viewing galactic events from their tomb worlds with ancient patience, the Ork modification of daemon engines is grimly amusing. They remember when the Krork, the ancestors of modern Orks, were proper warriors with advanced technology and tactical sophistication. Watching their degraded descendants defeat Chaos forces through sheer, stubborn enthusiasm and weaponized ignorance is darkly fitting. Some Necron cryptexts note that the Old Ones designed the Krork to be resistant to warp corruption, and perhaps the WH field represents that resistance taken to its logical extreme. In terms of military doctrine, the existence of Ork-operated daemon engines forces various factions to adjust their tactical responses. Imperial commanders learn that Ork attacks might include modified Chaos vehicles, in addition to their normal ramshackle arsenal. Chaos forces become more protective of their demon engines, assigning additional guards and developing contingency protocols for what to do if a demon engine is captured by greenskins. These adjustments have cascade effects on force deployment and strategic planning across entire sectors. The Inquisition, always concerned with information control, attempts to suppress knowledge of successful Ork demon engine modifications. They argue, not unreasonably, that if word spreads that Orks can successfully loot and operate demon engines, it might inspire more attempts, leading to increased chaos as these modified engines proliferate. Some Inquisitors go so far as to order the destruction of any Ork-modified demon engine encountered, regardless of whether it could be studied for strategic insights. This suppression effort largely fails because Orks communicate through a complex network of traveling merchants, wandering storytellers, and the occasional odd boy who hears voices in his head. News of successful looting spreads through Ork society faster than any Inquisitor can contain it. Within a few years of Drogscroll's initial success, mech boys across several sectors are attempting similar modifications, and the galaxy must adjust to this new reality. Perhaps most significantly, the phenomenon of Ork-modified demon engines raises questions about the nature of the WH field that have implications for understanding Ork society as a whole. If the collective psychic power of Orks is strong enough to fundamentally alter bound demons and make demon engines function better than their original Chaos designs, what else might it be capable of? Could it affect other warp entities? Could it reshape reality in more significant ways if properly directed? These questions remain largely theoretical because directing the WH field requires controlling Orks, which is like trying to direct a thunderstorm through strongly worded suggestions. But they hint at possibilities that other races find either fascinating or terrifying, depending on their perspective and how much they understand about the true nature of Ork psychic power. In the end, the broader implications of Orks capturing demon engines can be summarized simply. The 41st Millennium is a place where the rules are flexible, where belief can shape reality, and where the most sophisticated plans of chaos can be undone by greenskins with wrenches and an unshakable conviction that more Daka solves all problems. It is not the outcome anyone would have predicted. But in a galaxy where there is only war, the unpredictable is often more dangerous than the planned. Smashy the Bestest continues to fight for Warboss Skarzag's Warch, accumulating battle honors and modifications with each engagement. The demon within has long since stopped trying to escape or resist. It has found its place in the galaxy's chaos, serving destruction with enthusiasm rather than hatred, powered by belief rather than sorcery. It is still a demon. It is still dangerous. But it is also, in some indefinable way, orky, and that might be the most terrifying thing about it. Conclusion. The story of what happens when orcs capture a Maulerfiend is ultimately a story about the fundamental nature of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. It is a galaxy where belief can alter reality, where the most carefully laid plans can be undone by enthusiastic ignorance, and where the boundaries between the material and immaterial are more permeable than anyone wants to admit. When Drogscroll and his mech boys captured that demon engine, they were not attempting to make a statement about the nature of chaos or the power of the WAG field. They just saw something that looked like it would be really good for Crumpingits if it had more Daka. The profound metaphysical implications of their actions were entirely accidental, which is somehow perfectly appropriate for orcs. The demon that once powered a Maulerfiend for the Iron Warriors now finds itself operating as Smashy the Bestest, a garish parody of its former self that somehow functions better than the original. It has been changed by exposure to Waish energy, shaped by orc expectations, and forced to adapt to a reality governed by very different rules than those that created it. The demon has not been destroyed or banished. It has been repurposed, and in being repurposed, it has been fundamentally altered in ways that challenge our understanding of what demons are and what they can become. For the orcs, this is just another successful looting operation. Smashy works well, kills lots of things, and makes satisfying noises when it fights. That is all that matters. The fact that they have accomplished something that should be impossible by every established rule of demon binding and warpcraft is irrelevant. Impossibility has never stopped orcs before, and it certainly will not stop them now. For the rest of the galaxy, the existence of orc-modified demon engines represents a new variable in the endless calculations of warfare and strategy. It is one more unpredictable element in a cosmos already overflowing with uncertainty. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, unpredictability is often the most dangerous weapon of all. The tale of Smashy the Bestest continues somewhere in the war zone of the 41st millennium, a walking testament to the power of belief, the durability of hatred, and the fact that sometimes the most effective way to deal with the forces of chaos is not through faith or technology, but through hitting them with a wrench until they work the way you want them to. In the end, the lesson is clear. Never underestimate the power of orc ingenuity, the malleability of reality in the face of collective belief, and the capacity of the galaxy to produce outcomes so absurd that they circle back around to being terrifying. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with horrors beyond comprehension. But it is also filled with orcs, and sometimes, just sometimes, that makes all the difference. So if you enjoyed this deep dive into the bizarre intersection of orc technology and chaos demon engines, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We have got plenty more Warhammer 40,000 lore to explore, from the Imperium's darkest secrets to the strange and wonderful ways that orcs continue to defy the universe's expectations. Leave a comment below with your thoughts on orc-modified demon engines, and let us know what other topics you would like us to cover. Until next time, remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But there is also humor, absurdity, and the occasional demon engine painted bright red, because red ones go faster. Thanks for watching.